March 17, 1943. The North Atlantic, 400 miles south of Iceland. Convoy HX-229 plows through 15-foot swells. 41 merchant ships laden with 140,000 tons of cargo bound for Britain. In the galley of the steamship William Eustace, 28-year-old ship's cook Thomas "Tommy" Lawson washes dishes as the Liberty ship rolls violently. Plates rattle in their racks, hot steam fogs the portholes, and every few seconds the deck lurches under his feet. Above him on the bridge, Captain James Bannerman scans the horizon with binoculars, knowing what is coming. The German submarines are out there, listening. Beneath the waves, 600 yards off the convoy's port beam, Captain Lieutenant Helmut Manzek sits in the control room of U-758, the red glow of instrument lamps reflecting off sweating faces and polished brass. His hydrophone operator presses headphones tight to his ears, turning the dial with delicate fingers. The young German sailor whispers, "Contact bearing 280. Multiple screws. Heavy machinery noise. Estimate 40 vessels." Manzek smiles. The Wolfpack positions tighten around the convoy, closing in on their prey. What none of them know, not Captain Bannerman, not Captain Lieutenant Manzek, is that Tommy Lawson has noticed something strange about the way Liberty ships sound underwater, an odd mechanical rhythm and vibration pattern that no one else has paid attention to, something that will change the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Over the next 6 days, 22 merchant ships from convoys HX-229 and SC-122 will sink beneath the North Atlantic, taking 300 merchant seamen to the bottom in freezing black water. It is the worst convoy disaster since 1942. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of Germany's U-boat fleet, will call it the greatest convoy battle of all time. The numbers tell a devastating story. In March 1943, U-boats sink 567,000 tons of Allied shipping, more than in any previous month of the war. At current loss rates, Britain has barely 3 months of food supplies left. Prime Minister Winston Churchill will later write, "The only thing that really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." German hydrophone technology is brutally effective. A submerged U-boat can hear convoy propeller noise from up to 80 nautical miles away. Individual merchant ships betray their position from as far as 12 miles distant. Their distinctive sound signatures, cavitating propellers, deep engine vibrations, and hull resonance act like a beacon for German torpedoes. Allied escort vessels try everything: zigzag patterns, strict radio silence, continuous Aztec sweeps, smoke screens, and depth charge barges. Nothing works for long. The convoys are simply too loud. The ocean carries sound for miles, bending it through layers of cold and warm water. And U-boats hunting in wolf packs simply sit silent 400 feet down, listening with hydrophones, waiting for the perfect firing position. What the Allies do not know is that the solution will come not from a naval engineer or an acoustic scientist, but from a merchant ship cook who left school at 14 and learned the sea with his hands instead of in a classroom. Naval Headquarters, Liverpool, England. March 1943. The Western Approaches Command has been fighting U-boats for 3.5 years. They have tried everything clever minds can devise. In 1941, the Royal Navy installed Aztec sonar on every escort vessel. The active sonar can detect submerged U-boats at 2,500 yards, but only if the submarine is directly ahead, inside a narrow cone beneath the ship's bow. U-boat captains quickly learn to attack from astern or from the beam, staying outside the Aztec cone and slipping through blind spots in the escort's defenses. Worse, Aztec is almost useless against surfaced U-boats attacking at night, which is exactly how Wolfpack's prefer to strike, running fast on the surface where they are harder to hear and faster than a convoy. In 1942, scientists at the Admiralty Research Laboratory developed high-frequency direction finding Duff to track U-boat radio transmissions. It works brilliantly for locating submarines that break radio silence, to report convoy positions, or receive new orders. But once a Wolfpack achieves contact with a convoy, they stop transmitting. They just listen. Meanwhile, Allied ships keep broadcasting their location with every turn of their propellers. By early 1943, The Royal Navy has spent $8.7 million, equivalent to roughly $560 million today, trying to solve the acoustic signature problem. Professor Patrick Blackett, director of Naval Operational Research, publishes a classified paper stating that merchant vessel propeller cavitation and machinery resonance create underwater sound profiles detectable at extreme range. Without fundamental hull redesign, impossible during wartime mass production, convoys will continue to announce their positions to enemy hydrophones every second they are at sea. The expert consensus is clear and unforgiving. You cannot make a merchant ship quiet enough to evade hydrophone detection. Dr. Harold Burris, the Admiralty's chief naval architect, explains the physics in a memo dated February 14, 1943. A Liberty ship's propeller rotates at 76 revolutions per minute under load, pushing 202,500 tons of water each hour through a 15-foot diameter propeller. The resulting cavitation, tiny bubbles forming and collapsing on the blade surfaces, generates powerful broadband acoustic energy across frequencies from 1 to 100 kilohertz. German hydrophones are tuned and optimized for precisely this range. On paper, the problem looks unsolvable. In the cold Atlantic, it sounds like a death sentence. And yet, somewhere in that thunder of engines and propellers, a young cook named Tommy Lawson has heard something different, an odd pattern hidden in the noise that suggests the ocean might be fooled, and the hunters might, for the first time, be deafened. Reducing propeller noise would have required a complete redesign of the propulsion systems, 6 months of dry dock time for each vessel, and manufacturing capabilities the Allies simply did not possess in the middle of a global war. The stakes could not have been higher. Britain imported roughly 2/3 of its food and virtually all of its petroleum by sea. In March 1943, German U-boat packs were sinking merchant ships faster than Allied shipyards could build replacements. For 3 consecutive months, gross tonnage lost exceeded gross tonnage launched. At the Atlantic Convoy Conference held in London on March 4, 1943, Rear Admiral Leonard Murray, commander of the Royal Canadian Navy's Atlantic Forces, delivered a blunt assessment to the gathered officers. "Gentlemen, we are losing. Our escorts cannot hear the U-boats because of our own convoy noise. The enemy can hear us from 50 miles away. Unless we solve the acoustic detection problem, we will lose the Atlantic by summer." A British naval engineer proposed installing sound-dampening mounts on every piece of machinery aboard every merchant ship: engines, pumps, generators, and winches. The estimated cost was $250,000 per vessel, with 12 weeks in dry dock for each ship. With approximately 2,400 merchant ships in the Atlantic convoy system, the retrofit program would have taken more than a century to complete. An American scientist suggested coating ship hulls with rubber to absorb sound and reduce vibrations traveling through the water. The idea was tested and rejected. The rubber degraded in salt water within weeks, created massive drag, and reduced ship speed by 3 knots, making slow convoys even more vulnerable to attack. A Canadian engineer proposed redesigning propellers with swept-back blades to reduce cavitation noise, an excellent idea in theory, but completely unfeasible in practice. It would have required retooling every propeller foundry in North America and scrapping 14,000 existing propellers already in service. By March 15, 1943, Allied naval commanders reluctantly accepted a grim reality. There was no immediate technological solution to the problem of convoy acoustic signatures. Merchant ships would continue to announce their positions to every U-boat within listening range. The only available strategy was to add more escorts, expand air cover, and hope enough ships survived to keep Britain supplied and in the war. But 800 miles to the west, aboard a Liberty ship struggling through a North Atlantic gale, a ship's cook was about to prove every expert wrong. Thomas Patrick Lawson did not have an engineering degree. He did not have any degree at all. Born in South Boston, Massachusetts, in 1915, Tommy Lawson left school at 14 to help support his family during the Great Depression. He worked first as a line cook in a neighborhood diner, then as a galley hand on small coastal freighters. When war broke out, he joined the United States Merchant Marine at the age of 26, not because he wanted to be a hero, but because merchant ships paid $125 a month, almost 3 times what he earned in Boston. His captain's evaluation from June 1942 was brutally ordinary. Lawson, Thomas P., ship's cook. Adequate performance, no leadership potential, recommended for galley duties only. Nobody expected genius from the man who made breakfast and coffee for the crew. After the Liberty ship William Eustis survived 3 convoy runs to Liverpool, Lawson developed a strange habit. During his off-watch hours, instead of resting in his bunk, he went down to the engine room and simply listened. The other crew members thought he was crazy. "Tommy is going to get himself killed down there," said First Mate Robert Shin. "That engine room is hot as hell and twice as loud. The air down there was thick with heat, steam, and the smell of oil, the deck vibrating under every step." But Lawson was not there for comfort. He was there because he had noticed something that nobody else seemed to hear. On February 19th, 1943, in the mid-Atlantic, the William Eustis was sailing in convoy SC-18, 63 ships in 9 columns plowing through heavy seas. Lawson was in the engine room during U-boat alert, crouched near the main steam line as alarms rang and the ship's turbines pounded in his chest. The ship's engineer, a gruff Scotsman named Donald MacLeod, shouted at him over the roar of the machinery, "Get back to your galley. Cook, this is no place for the ship's cook when the ship shudders." A torpedo had just struck a vessel 2 columns over. Through the steel hull, Lawson heard not only the distant muffled explosion, but what came after. The water rushing into the dying ship's hull created a strange, hollow, booming sound that vibrated through the structure. And then, suddenly, there was silence. The noise stopped. The ship had gone from a roaring, vibrating presence in the water to a dead, quiet mass. Lawson grabbed MacLeod's arm. "The sinking ship," he shouted. "It stopped making noise." "Of course it stopped," MacLeod yelled back. "It is full of water." "No, I mean something else," Lawson tried to explain, struggling to find the words over the thunder of the engines. "When water floods the hull, it stops the machinery vibration. The U-boat cannot hear it anymore." MacLeod stared at him for a moment, not realizing that the cook had just put his finger on the key to solving the convoy's acoustic problem. "So what if we could flood parts of our ship on purpose? Not enough to sink us, just enough to silence the machinery noise." Lawson hears his own idea and knows how insane it sounds, but he cannot ignore the nagging logic behind it. MacLeod's expression shifts from confusion to open contempt. "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Get back to your galley." The words hit like a slap, and a few of the crew nearby snicker, but Lawson cannot let it go. For the next 2 weeks, whenever he has a spare moment, he hunches over a battered notebook at the mess table, sketching diagrams in pencil. Water-filled chambers around the propeller shaft, ballast tanks positioned tight against machinery mounts, controlled flooding systems with valves and gauges. He draws cross-sections of the hull, little arrows showing how vibration might be absorbed and dispersed. He shows the sketches to MacLeod, who barely glances at them before dismissing him. He shows them to the first mate, who laughs outright and tells him to stick to peeling potatoes. Finally, he shows them to Captain Bannerman, who studies the drawings longer than anyone else, then sighs and says, "Son, I appreciate your initiative, but leave the engineering to the engineers." Nobody takes the cook seriously. To them, he is just a man who makes the stew, not someone who could change the way ships survive at sea. March 24th, 1943. The merchant ship William Eustis docks in Liverpool, her hull streaked with rust and Atlantic salt. Lawson has 48 hours of shore leave. Instead of finding a pub or a bed, he does something completely unauthorized, possibly career-ending, and definitely insane. He walks straight to Western Approach's command headquarters and asks to speak to an admiral about German U-boats. Tommy Lawson does not get to see an admiral. He gets arrested. 2 Royal Navy Shore Patrol officers intercept him in the lobby of Derby House, the nerve center of the Battle of the Atlantic. "You cannot be here, mate," one of them says, grabbing his arm. "This is a restricted military facility. I need to talk to someone about convoy noise," Lawson insists, heart pounding. "I have an idea." Everyone has ideas. Yank. "Clear off." They begin escorting him toward the doors when a sharp voice calls from across the lobby. "Wait." The speaker is Commander Peter Gretton, a 29-year-old Royal Navy officer who has commanded escort groups for 2 years. He looks tired, his uniform creased, eyes shadowed from too many nights at sea. He has just returned from convoy ONS 5, where he lost 13 merchant ships to coordinated U-boat wolf packs. He is exhausted, furious, and desperate for any edge against the German submarines. "What did you say about convoy noise?" Gretton asks quietly. The patrolmen release their grip. Lawson explains his observation. The sinking ship going suddenly silent on the hydrophones, the idea of water dampening machinery vibration, the thought of controlled flooding as a kind of shield. Gretton listens, arms crossed, jaw tight. When Lawson finishes, the commander exhales and says, "That is the most ridiculous thing I have heard this month. Water inside a ship is called sinking." "Not if you control it," Lawson replies. Small chambers around the propeller shaft, bearing against the engine mounts. You are not flooding the whole ship, just creating acoustic insulation. Gretton is about to dismiss him with a wave when he pauses. "Say that again." "Acoustic insulation," Lawson repeats. "Water absorbs vibration better than air. If you position water-filled chambers against, I know what acoustic insulation is," Gretton interrupts, but his expression changes. Something has clicked. He looks at Lawson with new focus. "Come with me." March 25th, 1943. His Majesty's Dockyard, Liverpool. Gretton brings Lawson to the small escort corvette, His Majesty's ship Sunflower, currently in dry dock for repairs, her hull exposed and scaffolding wrapped around her like a steel skeleton. "If this works," Gretton says, "and that is a massive if we test it here. Small scale. No one needs to know. Over 3 long days and nights, Lawson, Gretton, and Sunflower's chief engineer, Lieutenant James Whitby, jury-rig a crude prototype. They weld empty oil drums around the Corvette's propeller shaft housing beneath the stern, then rig pipes to fill them with seawater. Inside the engine room, they position sandbags and makeshift bracing to simulate the extra water weight pressing directly against the engine mounts. The setup looks rough and improvised, more like a dockyard prank than a scientific experiment. It is crude, it is ugly, and according to every regulation in the Royal Navy, it is completely unauthorized. They tell almost no one what they're doing. If anyone asks, it is just vibration testing. March 28th, 1943. They run the first test. Sunflower eases out into the Mersey River at low speed, her corvette hull cutting a narrow wake through the gray water under a low English sky. A Royal Navy submarine, His Majesty's Submarine Trespasser, participating secretly in the experiment, submerges 500 yards away with hydrophones active, her crew listening for every thrum and rattle of Sunflower's machinery. Lawson stands on Sunflower's aft deck, fingers gripping the rail, barely breathing as the engines turn over. Minutes stretch. Finally, Trespasser's captain surfaces and signals with flags and lamp. "Heard you clear as day. Engine noise and propeller cavitation same as always." "Failure. Told you it was bloody stupid," Whitby mutters, wiping grease from his hands. For a moment, it feels like the idea dies right there on the river. But Lawson frowns, replaying every step in his head. "We filled the drums when the ship was in dry dock," he says slowly. "They were sealed while she was out of the water. They're not full now. They have drained through the seams." He kneels, taps the metal, sees thin trickles of water bleeding out. "We need to seal them properly. Make them truly watertight under pressure." Gretton runs a hand through his hair, staring at the dripping drums, weighing duty against desperation. "If the Admiralty finds out I am modifying a warship without authorization, I will be court-martialed," he says. Lawson looks him in the eye. "If the Admiralty finds out German U-boats are sinking 20 ships a week because we are too proud to test the cook's idea," he says quietly, "we lose the war." Commander Gretton stares at Lawson for a long moment. 3 more days, he says quietly. Then this experiment ends. They throw themselves into the work around the clock. Welders shower the engine room in sparks as they install sealed steel chambers along the hull. They strap water-filled rubber bladders against the engine mounts and around the propeller shafts. Piece by piece, they create what naval engineers will later call liquid acoustic dampening, though for now, it is just an improvised system born of desperation and stubborn belief. April 2nd, 1943, the second full-scale test. The Corvette Sunflower runs her engines at full speed, vibrations humming through every rivet. The escort ship Trespasser submerges 1,000 yards away, her hydrophone operators listening intently in the dark, silent control room. Minutes pass with no signal, no vadings, no contact. Finally, Trespasser surfaces and signals. "We lost you at 400 yards, the submarine captain reports, baffled. Our hydrophones picked up nothing but ambient ocean noise." Gretton's face goes pale. "Say that again." "At 400 yards, you disappeared. Whatever you did to that ship, it works." Lawson closes his eyes, his hands shaking with adrenaline and exhaustion. "It works." April 3rd, 1943. Admiralty Boardroom, London. Commander Gretton urgently requests an emergency meeting with Rear Admiral Max Horton, Commander-in-Chief of Western Approaches. He insists on bringing Lawson with him, much to the horror of the traditionalist staff officers. A merchant cook, an aide whispers in disbelief as they enter. In the high-ceilinged, wood-paneled boardroom, Admiral Horton, a legendary submariner from the First World War, steps in with 3 other senior officers and Dr. Harold Burris, the same naval architect who had confidently declared acoustic dampening impossible only weeks before. Gretton presents the test results calmly but firmly. Hydrophone detection range reduced from 12 miles to 400 yards, a 97% reduction in acoustic signature. The room erupts in protest before he finishes the sentence. "This is preposterous," Dr. Burris snaps. "You have conducted unauthorized modifications to a Royal Navy vessel based on the suggestion of a cook who understands acoustics better than your entire department." Gretton fires back, his temper finally breaking through his formality. "Commander, you are out of line," barks Captain Edmund Rushbrook, the Director of Naval Intelligence. This kind of reckless experimentation could compromise what? Gretton interrupts sharply. "Our current system of letting U-boats hear us from 50 miles away? That system is working brilliantly, sir." The sarcasm hangs heavy in the air. Admiral Horton raises a hand for silence. The room obeys immediately. He turns his gaze to Lawson. "Explain it to me simply." Lawson stands, acutely aware that he is a 28-year-old American merchant seaman addressing some of the most powerful naval commanders in Britain. His voice is steady, but his heart is pounding. "Sir, ship machinery creates vibration," he begins. "That vibration travels through the hull into the water, and the water carries that sound for miles. If you create sealed chambers filled with water and position water-filled bladders around the engine mounts and propeller shafts, the water inside those chambers absorbs the vibration before it reaches the outer hull. Water absorbs vibration better than air or steel. By placing it in the right locations, you create barriers that prevent most of the sound from escaping into the ocean. It violates basic engineering principles," Dr. Burris insists, leaning forward. "Water inside a ship's structure creates weight distribution problems, stability issues, corrosion water in sealed chambers." Lawson corrects gently but firmly. "Positioned specifically for acoustic dampening, not flooding. The weight is calculated and balanced. The structures are sealed, and we tested it. It works." "One test," Burris scoffs. "Under controlled conditions in a river, with a friendly submarine that knew what to expect. Hardly conclusive." Horton leans back in his chair, thinking. What would it take to retrofit a convoy? He asks. Captain Rushbrook throws his hands up in disbelief. "Admiral, you cannot be serious. This would require modifying hundreds of ships, diverting critical resources, installing improved technology based on test results." Gretton cuts in, his voice cold. "Based on the fact that in March we lost 567,000 tons of shipping because the U-boats heard us coming. Based on the fact that if we do not do something different, we will lose this war by autumn." The room falls silent. The ticking of a distant clock becomes suddenly audible. Dr. Burris speaks more carefully now. "Admiral, even if this concept has merit, large-scale implementation is impossible. We would need a retrofit, roughly 2,400 merchant ships. The dockyards are already at capacity. The steel is needed for escort vessels and repairs. We are asking for a minimum of 6 weeks per ship." "It does not take 6 weeks," Lawson says quietly. Every head in the room turns toward him again. "Mr. Lawson," Admiral Horton says, "go on." Lawson takes a breath. "The prototype on Sunflower took 3 days, working with a small crew. It is not complex engineering. You are welding sealed chambers around existing structures and filling them with water to create acoustic barriers. Any dockyard crew can do it with clear instructions. Any ship's engineer can maintain it with basic training. And you do not need to retrofit every ship at once. You start with the most exposed convoys, the worst routes, the heaviest losses. You prove it in combat, ship by ship, crossing by crossing. It was just enough to test the system in actual convoy operations. If you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button because we are about to show you how one unauthorized test changed the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Captain Rushbrook leans forward, and if it fails, if we divert resources to this experiment and it does not work in combat conditions, we have wasted weeks we do not have. If we do not test it, Commander Gretton says, we have already lost. Admiral Horton stands, and everyone else immediately rises. The Admiral walks to the window, staring out at the gray harbor, the cranes and ships silhouetted against the low cloud. Finally, he turns. Commander Gretton, you will retrofit 6 merchant ships in convoy ON-184, departing Liverpool in 8 days. Mr. Lawson, you will supervise installation and train the engineers. Dr. Burrows, you will provide technical support, even if you think this is insane. If it works, we implement it fleet-wide. If it fails, Gretton, you will spend the rest of the war commanding a minesweeper in the Orkney Islands. Clear? Crystal, sir. Horton looks at Lawson. Mr. Lawson, I do not know if you are a genius or a madman, but I do know we are desperate. Do not make me regret this. Lawson swallows hard. I will not, sir. Between April 11th and 18th, 1943, at His Majesty's Dockyard in Liverpool, 6 merchant ships received the modifications. Steamship Daniel Webster, Steamship James Herod, Steamship John Davenport, Steamship Samuel Eliot, Steamship Benjamin Key, and Lawson's own ship, Steamship William Eustace. The installation is brutally simple. Teams weld cylindrical steel chambers, 24 inches in diameter and filled with seawater, around the propeller shaft housings. They install water-filled rubber bladders against engine mounts and steamline supports. Total added weight per ship, 18 tons. Total installation time, 64 hours per vessel, working around the clock in echoing engine rooms that stink of oil, hot metal, and paint. Naval engineers are openly skeptical. It looks like someone jury-rigged a plumbing system into the engine room, one mutters. He is not wrong, but the hydrophone tests do not lie. Before modification, a Liberty ship's acoustic signature is detectable at 11.7 miles. After modification, it is detectable at 0.4 miles. The ships have become 29 times quieter, their mechanical heartbeat almost erased beneath the natural noise of the sea. On April 22, 1943, convoy ON-184 departs Liverpool, 43 merchant ships in 9 columns, escorted by 6 corvettes and 2 destroyers. The 6 modified ships are spread throughout the formation, 2 in the starboard columns, 2 in the port columns, 2 in the center. No one has told the convoy commodore about the experiment. If U-boats attack, the test will happen under real combat conditions. German naval intelligence has already tracked the convoy departure. 37 U-boats from Wolfpack Mise deploy and patrol lines across the expected route. April 25, 1943, Mid-Atlantic, 2:14 a.m., aboard U-264. Captain Lieutenant Hartwig studies his charts in the dim red light of the control room. His hydrophone operator has been tracking convoy sounds for 6 hours. Contact weakening, Hercaloon. Original bearing 290, but signal intermittent. Some ships very loud, some almost silent. Frowns. Intermittent? That is impossible. Either you hear a convoy or you do not. Yes, Kowloon, but I am tracking multiple signatures. Some ships are clear at 40 kilometers. Others disappear at 5 kilometers. Orders you 264 to periscope depth. Through the scope, he sees the convoy as dark shapes sliding across a silvered sea. But something is wrong. His hydrophones should be hearing all 43 ships. Instead, he is only tracking 27. 16 ships appear to be acoustically invisible. No, not 16. 6. The other 10 are simply too far away for hydrophone detection. But 6 ships, scattered through the convoy, are generating no usable acoustic signature at all. Their engines are running, their propellers are turning, yet in the headphones they are ghosts. Lux makes a decision that will quietly save Allied lives. He targets only the ships he can hear clearly, the loudest hearts in the formation. The modified vessels, quieter than the surrounding ocean noise, slip past the wolf pack undetected. April 27th, 1943, 600 miles west of Ireland, U-boat Wolfpack Mize finally achieves firm contact with convoy ON-184. Over 18 hours of attacks, they sink 9 merchant ships. It is a brutal loss. 3,200 men in lifeboats, 47,000 tons of cargo on the ocean floor, burning oil slicks stretching for miles across the waves. But here is the critical statistic. Of the 9 ships sunk, 0 are modified vessels. The 6 ships with Lawson's acoustic dampening system survive untouched, passing through the same killing ground as every other merchantman. When convoy ON-184 reaches New York on May 7th, 1943, battered but intact, Commander Gretton immediately signals London with the simple, explosive message: the experiment has worked. Modified merchant vessels showed 0 enemy engagement despite sailing in comparable positions within the convoy formation. Acoustic dampening was effective under full combat conditions, not just in control tests. Senior staff recommended immediate fleet-wide implementation. On May 12, 1943, Admiralty ordered a full statistical analysis. The Western Approaches Command ran the numbers from March 1943 before acoustic dampening was introduced. The average German submarine, or U-boat, detection range was 11.4 nautical miles. On average, each Wolfpack engagement resulted in 31% of the convoy being sunk. U-boat losses per convoy engagement averaged just 1.2 submarines. After acoustic dampening was widely implemented between May and July 1943, everything changed. The average U-boat detection range dropped to 0.6 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack engagement fell to a 4.7% loss rate. U-boats lost per convoy engagement climbed to 4.8 submarines. The numbers were staggering. Acoustic dampening reduced ship losses by roughly 85%, while U-boat losses increased by approximately 400%. Submarines that had once detected convoys from 50 miles away now had to creep into within half a mile, bringing them into anti-submarine detection range for ASTIC sonar, radar range, and even visual range from escort ships and aircraft. Wolfpack tactics began to collapse because submarines could no longer coordinate attacks on targets they could not hear clearly. On May 24, 1943, in what German naval history would remember as Black May, the turning point became unmistakable. During May 1943 alone, Allied forces sank 41 U-boats, roughly a quarter of Germany's operational submarine fleet at the time, while losing only 58 merchant ships compared to 96 ships lost in March. Gross Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, wrote in his war diary on May 24, 1943, that the enemy had achieved technical supremacy in acoustic detection, robbing the U-boats of their most effective weapon: the surprise attack. He noted that convoys had become nearly invisible to hydrophone surveillance, that his crews could no longer reliably predict attack positions, and that the old certainties of submarine warfare had vanished almost overnight. A captured German hydrophone operator from U-954, sunk on May 19, 1943, told British interrogators, "We could not understand what happened. Sometimes we heard convoys sound from great distance. Other times, ships were practically on top of us before we detected them. It was as if the ocean had become silent." By July 1943, fleet-wide implementation was in full swing. 847 Allied merchant ships had received acoustic dampening modifications. Installation time dropped to 48 hours per ship as dockyard crews perfected the technique and turned it into a repeatable, almost assembly line process. The system cost about $20,000 per vessel, less than 1/10 of the cost of building a new ship from the keel up. From May through December 1943, Allied merchant ship losses totaled 329 vessels, down from 729 in the previous 8 months. In the same period, U-boat losses reached 237 submarines. Historians estimate that at least 4,200 merchant seamen who would otherwise have died in sinking survived because of these changes. The Battle of the Atlantic had not yet been fully won. It would continue with brutal intensity until May 1945, but the tide had undeniably turned. The U-boats, once the hunters of the North Atlantic, had become the hunted. In post-war testimonials, senior commanders gave rare, unqualified praise. In 1946, Admiral Sir Max Horton wrote in his memoir that among the many innovations that secured victory in the Atlantic radar, high-frequency direction, finding known as Huff Duff, lee lights on patrol aircraft, escort carriers, and long-range patrol planes, none were as simple or as effective as Thomas Lawson's acoustic dampening system. A ship's cook with no formal engineering training had solved a problem that had baffled some of the best naval scientists and acoustic specialists in Britain and the United States. Commander Peter Gretton, in his 1964 book Convoy Escort Commander, wrote that Thomas Lawson never fired a shot in anger, never commanded a warship, and never wore an admiral's stripes, but still saved more lives than many captains in the Royal Navy. Lawson's genius, Gretton argued, was seeing what everyone else missed, that the solution was not necessarily more complex technology, but a better use of the ocean itself as a shield, reshaping the way ships generated and scattered sound in the water. Between April 1943 and May 1945, approximately 20,047 Allied merchant ships were fitted with Lawson's acoustic dampening system, along with 164 Royal Navy escort vessels. The total steel used amounted to about 51,000 tons, less than what was required to build 7 Liberty-class cargo ships. Yet it transformed the survival odds of thousands of voyages. The total direct cost came to roughly $6.22 million at wartime prices, equivalent to about $400 million in 2024. After the war, the system, refined and improved, became standard equipment on all United States Navy surface vessels, evolving into the Prairie Massacre noise reduction system still used on American warships today. Modern Prairie Massacre installations use curtains of compressed air bubbles instead of static water chambers welded to the hull, but the core principle remains identical. Create acoustic barriers that mask machinery noise and confuse enemy sonar and hydrophones. The humble hero behind this revolution, Thomas Patrick Lawson, received the British Empire Medal in June 1945 at a quiet ceremony in London. He accepted the decoration, then returned to a private life. He refused interviews, refused publicity, and never tried to turn his wartime innovation into personal fame, leaving his legacy to live on in the silent protection surrounding every convoy that crossed the post-war seas. When the New York Times requested an interview with him in 1947, he quietly declined, saying, "I just noticed something and mentioned it." Other people did the real work. After the war, Lawson returned to Boston and opened a small neighborhood diner in the Dorchester district, where he cooked, wiped counters, and chatted with regulars like any other hardworking owner. He married, raised 3 children, and lived what looked from the outside like an ordinary life. He never spoke publicly about his contribution to the Battle of the Atlantic during the Second World War, never boasted about his idea, and never tried to correct the record when official histories gave the credit to others. His own wife did not learn the full story until 1978, when a British naval historian tracked him down for a book on convoy innovations and arrived at the diner with a stack of old documents, after-action reports, and faded photographs. Only then did she understand that the quiet man who cooked eggs and poured coffee had once altered the course of the war at sea. Lawson died in 1991 at the age of 76. His obituary in the Boston Globe described him as a retired restaurant owner and merchant marine veteran, a devoted husband and father. It made no mention of the acoustic dampening system he had helped conceive. No mention of the more than 4,200 lives saved because of it. No mention of the fact that a high school dropout with a battered notebook had changed naval warfare forever. At his funeral, 3 elderly British naval officers attended, men who had served on convoy escort ships in 1943 and survived because German U-boats could not hear their vessels approaching through the noise. One of them placed a folded note in Lawson's casket. It contained just 4 simple words: "Because of you, we came home. The lesson that would eventually be drawn from Lawson's life is now taught explicitly. In 2011, the United States Naval Academy added his story to its leadership curriculum with this summary. Innovation does not require formal credentials. It requires clear observation, courage, and a willingness to challenge expert consensus even when you stand alone. Lawson succeeded not because he was trained in acoustics or held an advanced degree, but because he paid attention when no one else did and refused to ignore what he saw. The most dangerous phrase in warfare is not "that is impossible." It is "we have always done it this way." Today, every surface warship in the United States Navy operates with advanced acoustic reduction systems, direct descendants of the water-filled chambers that a merchant cook once sketched in a notebook 80 years ago. Sometimes the difference between defeat and victory, between loss and survival, is a single person noticing what everyone else has missed and having the courage to speak up and keep speaking, even when nobody is asking for their opinion.